Hello, everybody. This is Will Tagle. I'm Dean of the Wisdom School of Ubiquity University, and welcome to this auspicious gathering today that we have where we believe that the plant world has invited us into council today, and we're going to take a look at that. This last week in our leadership team at Ubiquity Wisdom, we acknowledge the fact that we have a growing sense that our fundamental contribution to Mother Earth and to the world of education is that we actually hold the proposal that the world beyond humans, that is everything in the universe that's not human control, is the most important feature of our life together. We hold the proposal today that we not only can commune with plants, that we can communicate with plants. Please note that difference. It's wonderful to commune with plants. Like just a few minutes ago, I was outside with our beautiful blooming irises. They smell a little bit different, each one of them. And so that was a communing, and that awakens me. But when the plant actually speaks back, that requires that we learn something called the mother tongue of the plant world. And let me tell you, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of a beginner there. I'm a beginning with that. So that's the general context, and I want to have Judith focus us this morning with a moment of meditation.
Okay. I think we will start with just breathing, settling in, allowing ourselves to be present. Just taking a few breaths, not anything like yoga-like, but just good breath, breathing into your body. And just letting yourself become fully present to yourself and to each other, to the group, and to the beauty of this day. I want to read a little poem that I found. It was hard to find poetry about communicating with plants, which I thought was very interesting. But I like this one. If you listen, not to the pages or the preachers, but to the smallest flower growing from a crack in your heart, you will hear a great song moving across a wide ocean whose water is the music connecting all the islands of the universe together. And touching all, you will feel it touching you, around you, embracing you with its light. It is in that light that everything lives and will always be alive. That is our dedication to the plant world today. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Judith. So I just want to hold up some plant material here. What you see is a plant growing just a few feet from where I'm speaking. And this is some sage that Mahatma Gandhi used, not this particular sage, but this species of plant, to purify himself before he went on the Salt March. And a few years ago, I planted it, and it's just doing beautifully. And I noticed this morning when I went out, I pinched off a little bit, and I actually kind of heard an ouch. And so I said, okay, so I was presumptuous. And what would you like for me to do? And I got very clear, get some scissors if you want some of this from me. And so I got some scissors and corrected my blundering human ways where I just assumed that I could go out and take what I wanted from this plant. But the plant spoke to me and corrected me. And in some sense, that's what we humans have to learn to do, be corrected by the plant world rather than intrusive and dominant. So I'm welcoming today 4 guests, and I'm going to introduce them each as I talk with them. And first up to talk to us today is Carol Flake Chapman, and Carol is the author of several books and just a beautiful person and writing poetry. You can connect with her on Facebook and get some of her poetry. But Carol, I want you to start by telling us a little bit about a plant that you got to know, and then we're going to make an attempt to have this guest plant welcome us by waving to us.
Yeah. Well, I was the first one to arrive at Ralston for the conference, and I decided to go for a walk. And I take the same path every time I go. I go up a trail up to the mountain. And in this case, I was walking beside some plants, which they looked to me to be lilies of some kind that had not yet bloomed. And then all of a sudden, I realized one of them was doing something very strange. It was twirling. And the wind was not blowing. It was not coming from the wind. It was just twirling. And I thought, whoa. So, and I didn't know at that time that Jim, later in the week, would be talking about the secret life of plants. And it's as though it was welcoming us. But of course, when you see things that are anomalous, you want to have a witness. So when Madeline Schwab arrived, I got her to go over and join me beside the plant. And there it was, it just twirled. It was a young plant. It's interesting. It was not one of the big mature plants. It was a young one. So, whee! It was like reaching out. But definitely it had a personality. There's just no question. And, you know, I've talked to plants a lot, but this was the first time I'd had one really talk back in a way that was so unusual, because plants move in slow motion. They, you know, you have to speed them up, you know, use technology and speed up the photography to watch them, to see how, in fact, they really do move even though they're rooted. But this guy somehow had figured out, I don't know, none of us could figure out how this was happening. But one of those beautiful mysteries.
Well, let's Dan is going to play a recording that you made, Carol, of this plant. So Dan, if you'll bring that up now, see if we can see what happens.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
How are
hello,
you?
hello.
How are you?
Oh my goodness.
You're a very happy plant. You're one of the happiest plants
Yep.
I've
Yep.
ever seen
Yep.
in my whole life. And look at you. You're going like crazy. Hello, 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 hello.
Let's play it again. We're going to play it one more time just so you can take a look at it.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello,
How are
hello,
you?
hello.
How are you?
Oh my goodness.
You're a very happy plant. You're one of the happiest plants
Yep.
I've
Yep.
ever seen
Yep.
in my whole life. And look at you. You're going like crazy. Hello, 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 hello.
Okay, so Carol, what is that like for you to see that? I know you took that video. What is that like for you to see that?
It just amazes me every time I see it. It's just one of those great, wonderful mysteries, you know, and as I say, to see a plant responding to you, I mean, I really felt it was communicating. And plants, as I say, usually move in slow motion, but this guy was moving fast. And it really seemed to shape and really to color our week as in our attempt to connect with nature in a really intimate, deep way. Nature seemed to be saying, yes, yes, I feel you, I see you, I sense you, and we are connected.
Well, good. Thank you so much. And we'll come back to get some comments from you later. I'm going to shift over to Lisa Dvorak. And Lisa, if you'll unmute yourself, there you go. So Lisa, let me give just a little bit of a context. This was a course that we were offering at the Wisdom School. at Ralston, which is in the Redwood Forest north of San Francisco. And Judith and I were scheduled to be there, but I had a fever and I couldn't come. So these 4 people that you see actually substituted for me, and from Judith and from all reports, we weren't missed at all, hardly. So that's great. And Lisa is a former assistant police chief in San Marcos, Texas, and now works in the interface between students and the community in terms of the environment and with particular reference to noise. So you're speaking to us today, Lisa, from your backyard.
I am. And if you give me just a minute, I want to show just a little bit of what it looks like. So that's part of the backyard. And what's important about that the backyard is that are the wildflowers that have influenced me, because those are all volunteers. It's not anything that I planted. And the wonderful part about that is that they, for me, I recently had some surgery, and that this field with these plants has been part of my healing process, to be out here every single day and to spend time with the plants. And they bring this sense of new beginnings and of regeneration and rebirth and patterns and renewal and revitalization, because they come back every year. And they adapt and they reform, and one year they'll be in one part of the yard, and then this year they moved over about 4 feet. So for me, the influence, at least today, and part of my healing process, are these plants and the wildflowers.
Right. And I want to backtrack just a moment, because you went to this seminar, which was entitled Wisdom and Co-Creating a New Civilization. And
Yes.
Certainly you were thrust into a leadership position and took the people out into the redwoods for a ceremony. And so just give us a few sentences about what that was like for you to kind of step forward and help with this ceremony of humans returning to the plant world.
Well, let me say that part of this is that we find these mentors and we find these places and we connect with other people. And these women that you see on the screen, or you will see, we're all part of this process to connect with this entire field of how to be able to hold the circle and all the wisdom that we bring collectively. And it's no one individual that really makes the transformation. It's that process of all of us bringing our wisdom, holding the circle and being together in this group. That was a very dynamic process. And also it was the forest and the waving plant that was the greeter at the beginning of the forest, to move us down into, with all the plant lives, into the water, and to do this very sacred blessing for people to be able to put their intentions into this water as it flowed through the forest, as if it was the blood of the body of Gaia, to be able to create new birth and to flourish what all of our intentions were.
Yeah, so in a way, the plant that everybody was seeing wave was really, in your view, kind of welcoming the humans that were gathered there into the forest, which is amazing.
Yes.
Because,
yes.
That very redwood forest, humans cut down to the ground at one time, and it had to come back. And it's just amazing that these plants would be so welcoming after all kinds of dastardly deeds we humans have done.
And if I might just add something too, what was very interesting about the waving plant, it is, I think that there are those experiences where you do hear from the plants to give suggestions or to give guidance. What was, as Carol mentioned, was that you had this physical movement. But for me, even more interesting, beyond clearly a plant that waves, because several of us got video of this, is that that plant also influenced other plants in the vicinity, because what we started to notice was that the plant would start to vibrate, and would vibrate, they too started to vibrate. And so it's as if it spread to other parts of the plant and different plants, that you could stand there and be with them and they'd start to vibrate.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. Now, I want to ask this, and I'll circle around to several of you on this one, though. Did you have some skeptic inside of you that was speaking in your inner council and saying something to you about what was happening?
You verify it, because you look around and you wonder, is it the wind? And so you do have an inner skeptic. And what's also important, I think, is that sometimes what we classify that as is that it's our own projection of and interacting with its human counterparts.
Yeah. Good. Well, let's circle back around in just a moment. So, Shannon, we want to make sure, Lisa was calling from San Marcos, and Carol from Austin, Texas, and now Shannon's beaming in from the state of Washington, near the Columbia River, where the Snake River comes into the Columbia. So talk to us a little bit about your experience with plants these days, Shannon.
In my own yard, I have a 7-circuit labyrinth. It is a portal. That journey into the labyrinth is a portal to different ways of connecting and connection to plants in my yard. And I have a meditation that I do often in my labyrinth, where I connect in different ways, self, in relationships. And my connection is very much from the heart, that heart field perception that Stephen Boomer speaks of. So my relationships with plants are many, and I feel that in a way, thinking of the plant at Ralston, that plant, while I have an interpersonal relationship with it, that plant is representing the voice of the entire ecofield that it is connected to and with. So.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. So let's move over to Germany now, and we have Konstantina Clark speaking to us from Germany.
I will also talk very briefly about the twirling plant. I had the opportunity to spend time with the plant like everyone else, and it was extraordinary. And in sitting with the plant and being present with the plant and listening to the plant, I felt that this plant almost was representative of Eros coming through. And plants have a great erotic life. I grew up with plants, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Of course, it rejoiced like we all rejoice at a kiss from someone we love.
Hear you. What comment do you have, Lily? It's good to see you.
I'm glad to see you also. I had a wonderful experience recently where not only the human species connected with the plant world, but the other creatures in the environment. I woke to see a squirrel running along the top of my fence, and it literally took its little hands and picked up a rose and smelled it. And then it went on down the fence and picked up some star jasmine and smelled it. And it was like saying, oh, take a moment and enjoy. And this was this wonderful communication between the plant and the living species that were four-legged.
Oh, and thank you, Lily, for that, because you bring up an important part of communicating with plants. As Carl Jung said, we really have to use our imaginations to kind of prime the pump, so that you imagine what the plant might be saying, and then sort of test that out against a larger perspective. So thank you for bringing that in.
You're welcome.
Good. So let's circle around and see, Carol, if you coming back to you. Let's see if you have any comments.
Yes, I love what my fellow panelists said about the plant, the dancing, twirling plant, because I do think, I don't know if it was a he or she, I think we related to it as both, that it was speaking to us from the eco field. And what it had to say, as you said, how do you interpret Wittgenstein when he was talking about language? If we could speak to lions, or if they could speak to us, would we understand them? Because plants speak in chemistry generally. They communicate through their roots, through chemistry. And so that was why this was so unusual. And they respond to touch, they respond to sound, they can hear us. They've done experiments showing that plants can hear water going through a pipe. Even though the pipe might be dry, they'll wrap their roots around the pipe because the scientists have theorized that they can hear the water. So it was somehow hearing us or feeling our vibrations. Scientists also have said, those who are studying plant neurobiology, that this could be the intelligence of the future. It's interesting that if they have a brain, it's distributed, it's all over the plant, and particularly in the roots. And a plant can survive losing 90% of itself and still survive. And how they correspond to each other. There was so much that this plant could have been telling us that, if we could interpret the language. It was just a splendid experience, and one that we'll all remember forever.
Right, and I think that's important, what you just said. So you guys had many teachers. You were doing some teaching yourself. You had wonderful participants. And yet, this little plant, the video lasted just a few seconds, and yet you, as I understand it, the plant spoke on and off all week long. It wasn't just one little moment.
No, it was dancing all week, and it did. As Constantina pointed out at the end, it stopped. And I felt that it was getting a little tired. I don't know. But it did its job. It had something to communicate. It was a messenger. It was an emissary, let's say, an emissary from the eco field, talking to us in its own way. Maybe it was some kind of advanced plants figuring out, to avoid being totally cut down, we have to learn their language. And maybe they're learning our language. Maybe they won't. 99% of the biomass is made on the earth is plants. We're just a little smidgen on the earth compared to plants.
Yeah, good, very good point. Okay, let's shift over to Lisa. See if we can bring Lisa in for another comment. Thank you, Carol.
I love all the comments also, that I find myself oftentimes watching the video over and over at the sense of the magic, and that these magical things that happen in nature, that had we not, as humans, not been present enough to take the time to look, to explore, to be there, how much we would have missed by this plant and whatever process it has done to be able to reach out to us. It did, by the end of the week, it was getting tired. I often, I would go down into the forest before sunrise. And I found that as the week went on, that when I would talk to it, that almost it was as if, hey, I'm tired. Can you guys come in a group or just kind of slow down just a little bit? but it is magical and it is amazing. And I think that there are many, many experiences that we bring to the table to put ourselves into. This magic is real. And so I'm going to talk just a second about the other plant, this Kwar Renew.
Okay, good.
This wonderful sage, that is able to do these shifts and to be with it, to be with all this wonderful plant life that is nurturing and supportive of us.
Let's shift over and get a comment from Shannon, see if we can bring Shannon in.
Well, I really appreciate what both Carol and Lisa just spoke to Carol when she spoke of the brain of the plant being very much part of the root system, and the chemistry that goes on in the roots is very analogous to the neurotransmitters in our very own brain. Mm-hmm. And those connections, they're connected with the filaments of fungi and with the bacteria and with all the little insects and nematodes, and there's this incredible web of connections. And so that plant, what's speaking through that plant is this whole web of connections. And the idea of the magic and the mystery of that. And I think we were all open to the possibilities of that connection because of our presence there during the week, all through the week. And speaking of presence, every morning we walked a labyrinth out in the heart-shaped lawn, surrounded by these redwood forest trees, and the pileated woodpeckers were out there hammering, and the ravens were cawing, and it was just, there was very much, everyone was present. All the participants were present to each other. They were present to the forest. They were present to the animals and other plants and beings in the entire ecofield. So it was much like, as I've said before, it was the most amazing experience of co-creative community that I've had, to be there that entire week. But even in just that moment, those moments in the labyrinth where we were so fully connected to each other and to the environment around us and the beings present and participant. So,
good.
So those are the things that I really connect with and want to emphasize.
Yeah. So this is a practice. This is a spiritual, psychological, and eco-field practice that we're talking about, because we're all fledglings at this. The indigenous people, prehistoric people, were very good at this, but we've lost that. But we still have the possibility, and so if the viewers who are feeling that this is a little clunky in our ability to express this, it's because we as humans are really struggling to get past all of the conditioning that we've had that will tell us that plants don't talk and so on and so forth. But the beautiful thing is that 21st century science is beginning to tell just what some of you have said, namely when the plant wraps its roots around a pipe, it's the nervous system of the plant actually reaching out to another aspect of the ecofield, taking in and giving information. And that's very difficult for us to get a hold of because of our conditioning. And in fact, one of the reasons we're gathered here today is to encourage ourselves to be more open-minded, if anything, to be more scientific. That is, to be open to the data that's coming to us and to shape a view of a world and reality that's based on some of these experiences, while at the same time honoring our inner skeptic. So in some ways, I think we're finding it's easier to communicate with plants than it is with this technology. So let's circle back around, and one of the panelists here, if you have something you can say, just hold up your hand and Dan will bring you in. Okay, Carol.
I'd just like to say that my mom is in a nursing home and unable to really move, and the word for what plants are in the sense of being immobile and rooted is sessile. And so I think of my mom as sessile. She is a plant essentially laying there, and plants communicate in such amazing ways, far more sophisticated than we'll ever really be able to understand. And so I communicate with her through plants in some ways. I will bring her a plant. She's always led the way in getting me to love plants. And the last time I took her a tulip, she put her hands put her hand in the soil to see how dry it was. I don't know, it just was so beautiful. And I just wanted to say that plants help us communicate to other human beings as well. And so they can communicate something more beautiful than we could even say in words sometimes.
Good. Thank you so much for that. It's really, I'm just recalling a comment from my teacher from years ago, Berhart, and when his father was near death and then died as a young boy, he went out and spent the night beside his father's grave. And some of his friends asked him, some of his white Caucasian friends said, that's really a strange thing you did. And he said, not any stranger than bringing flowers to your funeral. So I think it's just beautiful, the different ways we have of communicating in that way. Lisa?
Okay. I think one of the things that I find is that, as you mentioned, Will, is that we go through this process that it seems kind of hokey, or it just doesn't match what we've been trained to do or what we've been taught, or how things have been pulled out of us to separate us from nature. I think it's also important to note that one of the ways that we redo this connection is really through the system of practice. I have this really wonderful friend that's probably listening, and I hope she is, because she has just learned this process through time of what she does with plants. She'll go to the local Lowe's and she'll rescue the ones like Amy that are on the very end of their life cycle, and she will bring them back in and bring them back to life. And part of that is just from her own practice of opening and being aware and listening to the plants, and that's part of it. It's at how we do these practices ourselves to get in tune with this world that's really waiting for us to come back. And some of these really great messages come through as surprises that when we least expect them, that it's either plants or other things, rocks, hummingbirds, butterflies, all these wonderful things that are just wanting us to come back into the field. And part of that process is really doing it through those sacred practices of sitting in the silence and prayer and meditation and all those wonderful things that we as humans have really moved away from. And I would suspect that really everyone on this call that has had that experience, and part of this process is how we share and mentor other people to be able to come back into the field also.
Yeah, and as you're talking, Lisa, I'm reminded last night, Judith and I were at an eco meeting at Texas State University, and we were talking about the role of technology, and someone said, well, what would we ever do if the internet went down? How could our culture function if the internet went down? Okay, that is a question, but think what we're playing with in terms of plant life. We cannot function, period, without plants. Just take that in.
I didn't hear your question. I think I heard parts about how would we communicate if the internet went down. Was that it?
Yeah, and that, but what I said is we have no way, we cannot exist as humans without plants.
No, and we can't all exist without plants, but particularly it's also we can't exist without the field, because how could Aboriginal folks, that when they're out on a walkabout and they're out and about and they automatically get something from the field, I need to go home because my relative has died. That we have really tuned out, and it's this life force that comes through these plants and comes through the field and comes through the rocks and the trees and all that's around us, through the stars, that have been informing us since the Big Bang. The issue is that how it starts to really in this process of dying off, and how all these wonderful parts of nature is just waiting for us. And we get distracted by getting on the internet or reading more. We're chasing something else to get the answer. And the answer, like you clearly say, the answer is 8 steps away out of our own door. And I know that's kind of a strong way to put it, but it's also a passionate way to be able to say, don't discount. Don't discount those experiences that you have in nature, and the ones that are yet to come that are just amazing, wonderful, magical, delightful, nourishing, and enriching experiences.
Yeah. So I think we're going, because we've had some challenges with technology today, I'm going to ask Judith to bring us to a close today, hopefully. But I want to offer a bonus. In Louisiana, they have a wonderful word called lagniappe. And lagniappe means frosting on the cake. So we want to offer a little frosting on the cake after Judith closes us. We're going to take those of you who want to stay on for an extra 5 minutes. We're going to walk out into a labyrinth that's covered in bluebonnets and also bees. So our bees are all involved with the bluebonnets, and we want to give you a chance to experience that if you want to stay on.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your patience. And I just want to say a little something about plants and mothers, because that came up. And my mother has a plant called a hosta, I believe it's called. It's not a very pretty plant. It's a vine, and it's about 75 years old.
Oh my gosh.
My mother's 103. The plant's about 75. And she takes cuttings, and I have been really guilty of killing a hosta because she gave me a cutting and I couldn't get the thing to grow. So there's something about the connection between the horticulturist and the plant that's very powerful and very important. And she talks to all of her plants. She talks to every single one of them every day, and she's got tons of plants outside. So it's clear to me that there is a connection, and that the human is the person who has to struggle with getting the communication to be successful. Mm-hmm. And anyway, that's my confession about not having a green thumb. And I guess if I put that label on myself, then that's going to come true, because it's all about the thinking process. But we're going to sing right now, and some of you have heard this song. I thought I would sing the tree song, because trees are really ancient plants that are so beneficial to our life, all of our lives. We wouldn't be here without the trees, because they are the ones that take in the carbon and exude the oxygen so that we can breathe. Oh, trees of beauty, trees of might, within your wisdom I find my light. I've searched the world over and come back to you. Oh, trees of beauty, I love you, I do. Oh, trees, ancient ancestors bound to the earth, I pray for your blessings as I seek rebirth. I've searched the world over and come back to you. Oh, trees of beauty, I love you, I do.
Oh,
Blessings on the trees.
yes, blessing on the trees. And so we're formally ending now, and we're going to begin the lagniappe or the frosting on the cake. So if you want to stay with us, that's fine. And we're going to walk out. So we're walking on a beautiful, beautiful sun-splashed day with a incredibly blue sky. And if you listen really closely, keep in mind, this is just going to take 5 minutes of your time. If you listen really closely, you can hear the wild turkeys in the background. This is the Texas Hill Country. These wild turkeys love to come up here and have been several generations. This one right here, I don't know if you can see them, but they are big toms and they're courting their mates. Now we're walking past, and by the way, the turkeys, the foxes, the ring-tailed cats, they all like to come to this labyrinth and walk. What you're seeing here, and we've been trying to grow bluebonnets for 20 years and haven't had that much luck. And so these bluebonnets seeded themselves, completely oblivious to our efforts, and they are growing in the labyrinth. And we're just going to walk along the labyrinth so you can see these beautiful plants. And our bee colony, you call them colonies, Dan? Mm-hmm. Our bee colony is also here with us. Not quite as active as they were a while ago.
The pollen on their legs is red.
It is?
Most often yellow.
So we're relatively new beekeepers and are learning. And again, the bees have been very patient with us. We have a very active colony, and they've been patient with us as we learn how. In so many ways, the natural order is patient with us. Sometimes not so much, though. So we're going to show you this and then end our journey. We're at the center of the labyrinth, and you can see the bluebonnets have grown up around. This is a leg bone from one of the buffaloes that own our wildlife ranch in called Deer Dancer. And the bluebonnets have grown up around the center where this beautiful animal that graced us for so many years is the center of our meditation within our labyrinth. And just thank you so much for all of you who stayed on. We're looking and we can see that a fair number of people stayed on for this little trip, and we'll see you next month, the first Saturday in May. Aho.